Welcome to the Peruvian Canadian Institute's educational session during the first ever inaugural Peruvian Canadian Summit hosted by Huntington University. It's indeed an honor to have these distinguished educators here today to discuss creative and innovative ways to address issues in education at all levels and to share opportunities of collaboration between Peru and Canada as we move forward as two great nations.
Hello. Thank you so much. I couldn't be more honored and more proud to be here today with you with this incredible bouquet of people and making this event possible and this incredible synergistic collaboration between the country where I was born and the country where I am, which is my home today. I have a presentation that I would like to share with you. I have 30 years experience teaching. I think I have taught and teach children since I was in my teenagers because I like showing and because I was the older child of a 7 children family. And I would like to talk today about how can we use and improve education, and so to use it as a pathway towards a more sustainable and healthy society. Of course, this presentation wouldn't be possible if for the newly Peruvian Canadian Institute and from the people that support me in the Senate and also the people that support that we have from Parlaméricas and the experience that I have collected through the years in doing teaching and research at Laval University. So we have an agenda for sustainable development 2030. We have progressed. There were 17 objectives, and they are interlinked and interrelated. And I'm happy that Marc Serré mentioned in his remarks about circular economy, because part of the reasons because we are living in this world of inequality, of pollution, of poverty, and of even we are talking about lost generations because our youth is worried about the future, is because there are some things that needs to be fixed with our economic model, which says that I extract, I produce, I manufacture, I consume, and then I throw. Almost 60% of whatever we are extracting from nature end up in our landfills, end up in the oceans, end up as pollution. And as I'm sure you know, plastical microparticles are found today everywhere in the planet, included in the placenta of pregnant women. So education, awareness, and knowledge and wisdom needs to be democratized, and everybody should have access to the same level of educations around the world. So in the quality of education goal, we have targets: quality for primary and secondary school, early childhood primary education, a skill for decent works. We are moving towards the next industrial revolution, and we need to prepare the manpower, human power for the next low carbon economy that is coming. So how does education can help us develop more sustainable extractive industry? How can education create a better future for workers, improve social development and equality, improve our finances and energy sectors? So yes, it's true. All of this is related through culture, through consumption, through psychology, but also through the limits of our planet. There are 9 planetary limits. For example, the geochemical cycle of the nutrients, phosphorus and nitrogen, the acidification of the oceans, and many others. And there is a zone called the donut zone where our life in a quality type of life, it's possible, but we have to be very conscious of the limits of the planet, because the planet is ruled by mechanical, biological sets of rules, and we can just not simply play with them. So we have to learn to live within those limits. As I said, I've been teaching for 25 years now at the university level, and I have participated in multiple courses with respect to civil engineering and of course structure and geotechnical and very technical courses. But I have also do research work. And when you are in the civil engineering environmental field, there is something that it's always there, which is the contact with the community. I have made a point of trying to solve problems, because as engineers, we want to solve a problem, but I cannot solve a problem before I cannot measure it. So it was important to measure what was the problem. So it's true that we know we live in Canada, it's a G7 country, but there are still some advisories for water in many places in Canada. So water and waste treatment are always as something that it's in the going and it's developing, and because there is always this need. Then some pollutants where they are evident, like CO2 in the atmosphere, but then there are others that are trace pollutants. And now that we are very much into the looking for metals for the batteries, so we have to worry about trace pollutants, and so on, so on. And more lately, I've been really working on the impacts of climate change in our infrastructures, because floods and extreme weather events are destroying our infrastructure. And in general, what I want to say, that is my motto, is that, and I tell this to my students, is please observe and learn from nature. Please work with nature, because some of our problems have arisen from trying to control nature, trying to think that we are stronger than a tornado, stronger than a hurricane, stronger than waves. And at the end, we have had to build bigger and bigger and bigger infrastructures, and just to learn that nature is more powerful. Imitate nature, because nature is the source of a lot of inspirations, and conserve nature. This is a typical problem that we face, so with development comes challenges, and it comes obstacles, and it comes impacts to the ecosystems. So this is, for example, a lake where it's very close to the old Quebec City, and is considered the last urban lake. And you can see that in the 30s, it was mostly forest, and then it developed into agriculture. But then when urbanization grew, then you have all this transport, and the forest turns into agriculture, turns in urban settings. And with urban settings, we increase erosion, and we have the fertilizers coming to the lake. And at the end, the lake became hypertrophic, though completely green, and the fish that were there start dying or becoming small. And then there were toxins that were dangerous for using this water for drinking purposes or for swimming, for example. So we can simulate these things in the laboratory, and we can have different size of scale experimentation and observe and simulate what's going on in the lake. And as you can see, for example, in these columns, which were natural scale, the water was very, very green. But applying some natural coagulants, and by doing some constructed barriers, natural constructed barriers, we can put the phosphorus that exists, the excess phosphorus, into the sediments, and we can come and become back to use the services that this lake could provide. Water for drinking purposes, water for fishing, water for swimming. Another thing is that we use, for example, in Canada, a lot of salt, and this salt gets to the lakes and transforms a freshwater system into a salty water. And so the fish that are there in the ecosystem that is functioning in a freshwater system start to transform to a salty system, which is not good, because that was not the natural state of this environment. And then, so therefore, again, we lose the services. And then, well, for example, in Quebec, Minister of Transport was about to get sued because of salinization of a freshwater lake. So we built constructed wetland that imitates what we find in the estuary of the St. Lawrence River, and we put halophyte plants so that the halophyte can pick up the salt, and the roots can pick up the heavy metals coming from the combustion of the cars from the highways, and we have a natural environment that is doing the cleaning, plus offer an habitat for wildlife to develop. So we were very lucky to have done this work, and we implicated the community who came to help, and we did education. So to show people what was the problem, what were the potential solutions, how can they participate, and then how can the ecosystem can recuperate back to what it used to be. So this is now a place where people can go and have picnics and observe, and we have ducks and we have birds. And so this is something that I am proud to say that we work with community, and we, along as doing our technical stuff, our engineering stuff, we can also communicate and educate people. Is this true about the horrible accident in Lac Mégantic? I was there. It was a coincidence. I was there with some friends. I was called by the media because they were telling me that there was this huge fire, an explosion that actually it was equivalent to 1/16 of a nuclear explosion, and it was visible from the satellite. And there were 47 people that died that day, and they left 30 plus orphan children. And so how does it happen, you know? And when I talked, because I was there and I was talking to the firefighters, they were saying to me, we cannot pour water into the train cars. We cannot pour water into the fire, because what we need is to cool down the ones that are hot, because these explosions are not typical. These explosions are not the way we usually deal. Why? Because this petroleum, which was coming from the Bakken Formation in the North Dakota, is highly, highly flammable. And because of the temperature, it would jump just into detonations and explosions. Unfortunately, because the lake is very close to the Chaudière River, the Chaudière River, which is an affluent of the St. Lawrence, got also contaminated. So we saw for 180 kilometers the film of the oil floating, and we couldn't fish for more than 2-3 years in this river, where the ecosystem is very, very productive, and it gives a lot of fish to fish. We gather a pluridisciplinary group of researchers, and people coming from hydraulics, people coming from ecotoxicity, people coming from geology, people coming from social science, people coming from the government, and people coming from politics, political science. And we wanted to study this accident from different point of view. You know, do the post-mortem of the emergency, study what happened in the city and in the soil, how it got exploded and destructed because the rails and the fire, but there was also the destruction of the city town and the whole city downtown, and there was also the contamination of the river. We wanted to see what was the damage into the lake, because at least in the river, the water flows, but in the lake, water is stagnant. So impacts can have long-term impacts. And of course, we wanted to analyze with time and going into the cycles of the seasons, the winter and the spring and the summer, meaning that the flow of the water changes. What was the changes at the long term? And it was sad to see that when we collect these fish and we analyze the contaminants in the flesh of these fish, we saw and we found contamination, and that these there were visible deformations in many of the fish, which reveal that there is an impact, an ecological impact that persists, and it will remain in the ecosystem for years to come. So we did find fish with deformations, with flint erosion, and even with tumors. So that's why we had to stop consuming this fish for many years. We wanted also to understand different type of impacts, analyze the economics of the situation, because we were transporting so much petroleum, but it was very difficult to know to who this transport of petroleum benefit. So is this a business stimulus for the society? Of what extension? What is the what were the costs of the emergency? What were the costs of the remediation? What were the costs of the monitoring? And even until very recently, there was some psychological support to this community. So if I could gather all these costs, how does it compare with the economical benefits that the city is obtaining? We wanted to check also on the regulation of the transport of dangerous substances. And now that I am a senator, I recognize that, how important was this work, because this is evidence, because this is facts, because these are information and data that can be turned later into policies. And this is very important, that policies are based in evidence and are not based necessarily in ideologies or simple opinions. So we wanted to analyze vulnerability. We wanted to improve emergency plans, and we wanted to assess how much loss of habitats we have. And of course, from the technical point of view, we wanted to improve transport safety. From the technical point of view, come up with better solutions to solve these fires from unconventional petroleum, and create new tools for environmental impact assessment. Mining is an activity that is very important to the economy of Canada and to the economy of Peru. And we have to have, even though mining cannot sustainable in itself, the activity of mining can sustain activities that are more compatible with sustainable development. So sustainability is very important, because it will try to make mining more sustainable, so that we keep resources for future generations, and we make the concept of sustainability applicable to the mining economic activity. So it is important to say that there are stages that we have to move. We have to move from being efficient to move to being effective, and then move to being sustainable. And we are in that path. As for example, in Canada, we are we have some we have the Canadian Mining Association that adheres to responsible mining, and where we seek to include the communities during the decision, and we want to promote world-leading environmental practices, and that there is a strong commitment for safety and health of everybody that has to do something with the mine. This is very, very important. Something that I developed during my research is like, we have a problem of acid drain manage, and we have the problem of residues, mining residues. But in these residues, there is still some precious minerals, precious metals that are there, that we can extract them, for example, with the assistance of microorganisms that develop organic acids, and that make possible a further extraction of the precious metal. And this is being studied in Chile, in Cuba, in some of countries in Latin America, where they have gone to the residues and tried to further extract metals such as copper or nickel. So this is very important because it goes inside at what we call a circular economy, reducing the waste, recycling the waste or the residues, bringing it again to the process, to the extraction process, and improve the technology so we become more efficient and effective. Finally, I just want to mention that the importance of evidence-based policy, because decisions should be based, as I said, in informed, rigorously established evidence. And this is very important because the new economy is a knowledge economy, and if we want to increase the competitiveness of Canada, we have to move into this higher education in intellectual property and showing that we have better technology because we respect the communities, because we are more effective in the materials that we use, and we are more efficient because we cause less impact into the environment. And just to finish, because we have to acknowledge the elephant in the room, which is the COVID. So COVID didn't destroy the system, but the COVID put in exposure, it exposed the flaws of our system. And maybe one of these issues is that we have to hear more science. To the right, you have this appropriate emergency management for any emergency. And so we should have been better prepared. We should have had a better response. And now that finally we have a vaccine and finally we're coming out, we have to have a plan for a clean and just recovery. If we would have followed that was given by our own government many, many years ago, I think we would have seen that pandemics such as the COVID-19 were in the making, because the timeline shows that we are encroaching with wildlife animals habitats, and then that the spillover of coronavirus is more likely to happen because of this. So with that, I thank you very much. And if there are questions, I will be happy to answer. Thank you.